Okay, I'm assuming that we're live because it says live, but I'm not seeing any comments that are confirming that. But wait a second.
In due time.
I'm not live. Hold on.
You're not?
No, this is so odd. 1 second. Let me just figure this out for a second.
No rush, no rush.
All right.
It's okay.
Oh, okay, we are live. Sorry. It's just like there's just this huge delay. All right, we're just
That's
like
okay.
hanging out. You're just taking a drink. Okay. Hey guys, so I have with me Jerold Giddins. As this is the first time I'm doing like a live interview with anyone. So forgive me for like it being like a little bit jerky or whatever, or not very smooth. But Jerold Giddins, I was introduced to him by Will Chang. He is the one who is selling all of those amazing pink wave vapor hats that Jerold is wearing right now. And I just wanted to get his perspective on, and he's a father. He's also an artist. He's a singer, rapper, songwriter. And I wanted to get his perspective on, joining the YangGang, why he supports Andrew Yang and everything. And so let's just get into it. So Jerold, when did you find out about Andrew Yang? Have you been political? Were you political before this? And what got you into the whole YangGang?
Right. So first off, hello to everybody, YangGang. I always want to start off by reminding everybody to be positive, optimistic, and keep positive people in your circle. That is number one in your life in terms of keeping positivity around you. In terms of me being introduced to the YangGang, it really was sort of a spiritual experience, I would say, honestly, because of the fact that I come from a background where, like the family vibe, just love in general is not necessarily promoted. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper, I'm sure, within our interview. I can't remember, honestly, the first time that I ever saw Andrew Yang. I know that the Joe Rogan podcast played a large role in it. I saw him talking about the freedom dividend and just kind of speaking in ways that I never saw a politician speak before. So it kind of drew me to it. And, I just feel like a lot of his policies resonate with some of the things that are affecting the Black community, such as systemic, racism and such, which I'm sure we'll get into as well. And being a father just sort of, so I started my interaction on the internet as jgiddinsthefather with the intention of promoting fatherhood, because there's a huge lack and disparity of that in the Black community, right? And the purpose of that in general is to sort of just enlighten everybody on how we can sort of be better. The YangGang sort of stands for that for me. It's a metaphorical comparison of what I want to do for parenting, but for life. So I sort of have an engagement, or I sort of built a bond with the YangGang through that, I would say, type of perspective. Some people have the numbers. Some people go through all his policies and, check them out that way. My bond was more so with just the people. And that's also why I'm so, so close to a lot of the people that I follow. If anybody who follows me is watching this right now, they already know on a daily basis, I have to kind of connect with everybody. And just,
yeah. So well, all right. So, obviously your perspective is informed by your own background. And so I'd love to actually just get to know you in terms of like, what was your childhood like? Because on his channel, by the way, guys, like it's in the description below, go follow him on his channel, subscribe to his channel. He has some really great, incredibly insightful videos. But what was your childhood like? Because you talk about, how the idea of a father was very foreign for you and for a lot of other people that you knew. So can you just talk to us about what it was like growing up? Like, where did you grow up? Just your background.
Yeah. So just to let everybody know, I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, or if you go by Trump's description, the shithole, right? So I'm born and raised in Baltimore. I'm 32, born in 86. So I grew up in sort of a generation. I say that just sort of to set a precedent for you so you understand what generation I'm speaking of when I say the things that I say. I grew up sort of in an area or in a generational gap where fathers were just non-existent. Right now, the fathers that are in place they're taking the blunt of the damage from what was done in previous generations. You know, my mom, for instance, when I grew up, I didn't have a father, you know, and a lot of them hate men because of that. And this was due to, it's really going to require us to go deeper into it to explain, because there's things like the crack epidemic. There's things that took place within the Black communities that were meant to sort of cause the Black community to disperse and separate in terms of unity. And fathers went through a time frame where they just were not there. When I grew up in Baltimore, I can honestly tell you, like, I didn't know anybody who had their father. Like, I would have to think really hard to tell you that. I never said father. Like, it even feels weird saying that. Like, I've never said that, so I don't really have a bond with that word. And that's what really kind of started me on my journey, no pun intended, because my oldest daughter's name is Journey. Started me on that journey to sort of make sure that I enlighten and educate my fellow brothers, if you will. And it's not something that's specific to race. I don't want to make it out like, only deadbeat fathers are with, the Black community. But the difference in it is that there's a lack of ability to fight against it and an understanding of it. And it is more systemic and prominent in these communities because it's meant to fulfill a purpose. So growing up, I sort of was just I was raised by women, right? So there were no men. This is why we have a lack of fathers in the Black community. There is no model, there's no model father. There's no male to look up to and say, this is what I want to be when I grow up, or I like him, and it's funny, I get into, Will Chang. I love that guy. Anyway, during our conversations, we sort of touched on the fact that the, drug dealer in the Black community is the, I guess, metaphorical comparison in the Asian community of, the doctor, the lawyer, the person that goes to college, gets a degree. That's what you aspire to be in an Asian community, from what I gathered from my Asian fellow friend. And what I would say with us is that we just look up to wanting to take care of our family. And you see the drug dealers doing that. You see the guys who are out there, gang banging, and you see them able to do these things. And there's not a lot of hope outside of that, So as I said, growing up in that type of situation is what inspired me to want to kind of come online and just, and that kind of grew. It started out with me, first off, the name J Giddins the Father is one of three. It's J Giddins the Father, J Giddins the Artist, and J Giddins the Gamer, right? And the reason J Giddins the Gamer existed was because video games, as much as they're unpopular to a lot of people, they saved my life. I mean, quite literally. I grew up in a neighborhood where there were several guys who wanted me to come and, drug deal with them. They had positions for me. I could have easily taken that route, but I played video games, man. I was a heavy RPG gamer. I've played, Final Fantasy, Blue Dragon. Anybody who's into video games can tell you that these are very intensified RPG games, and they also are responsible for my intellectuality, or the nature of my intellectualism, because of the fact that a lot of these games had tons of reading, tons of social interaction. There's engagement in terms of communities, and a lot of them are based in decision making. So what would happen is I would be playing these video games, like Final Fantasy is a very deep one, and I would kind of take a step back and think about life and just how society was, because in the video games you have you have mages, you have those that are warriors, you have different groups, and they all kind of coexist in their own ways, and they're raised in their own backgrounds, and they all come up differently as you raise them in the game. And I take a step back and I say, well, we have Black people, we have white people, and we're all different, and we literally don't understand each other. I have a lot of white friends. Well, I wouldn't say I have a lot of white friends, but I have a lot of white friends in comparison to those that are probably in my exact position, right? And it has made me sort of open my eyes up to the fact that their perspective is skewed. Sometimes I would hear them say things like, well, that's just what they do. You know what I mean? When you talk about a Black person, say like they're stealing or they're robbing, or, they're out committing crimes, they say, well, that's just what they do, as if we're pre-genetically disposed to doing these things. But what the lack of understanding is that there's so little hope, and there's so little understanding of what can take place outside of what you see in front of you, and the things that are in front of you are placed there. So I'm sorry if you were about to say something.
No. I find it really fascinating, this whole like idea of being in this system, right? Or in this like almost like alternative reality, like within this larger society of where like these are my choices, these are my only choices, right? Like what was, without like trying to generalize too much, but like in your specific situation, like what was it like for your friends, like, you know, outside of like video games and everything, what was it like for your friends? Like, did they feel like, okay, this is my only option to do this, right? And they like literally felt like they had no other option. Like how much did that feel like it was just set up for them as an inevitability? Like, can you explain that sort of frame of mind? Because I find that fascinating. Like, what would friends say? Like, would they just assume that they're just going to get into like, you know what I mean? I just don't quite understand.
Yeah, well, okay, so this also steps into the realm of why division is stoked so much when it comes to those who support racism, right? Because you only know what you know, and you only know what you're surrounded by. So where I am, if I go outside my door, there's drug dealers on the corners. My friends, when they go outside their door, there's drug dealers on the corners. My family, same thing. And it's sort of something that's it's not like we all sit around and say, you know, hey guys, we're going to become drug dealers, but there is an intangible presence of pressure as it relates to, you know, providing, and there's no exit outside of that. You know, for instance, when you're growing up, I was always told, you know, you need to go to college. My mom told me you need to go to college because nobody who's Black ever goes to college, and nobody in our family ever went to college, so you need to go to college, right? It was never anything more than that. You know, there was never an actual roadmap. There was never, you know, well, this is what you're going to do. It was just, well, go to college. So your brain thinks like, I don't want to do that. And then you have all your friends that are buying all the nice, you know, this comes into the systemic racism, as I said, with music, with clothing, with everything that is designed to keep our minds within this bubble. So when you grow up in a situation where everybody in your school has on the freshest Jordans, you know, has on, you know, the best fitted caps, you know, they whereas in other neighborhoods it's more affluent or more important as to what school you go to, or maybe, you know, how big your house is, or, you know, how well things are taken care of. None of those things matter where I come from. Where I come from, what matters is, you know, who's dressed the freshest, who is the most popular. And one thing that's really, and that's something that can actually spill over into other nationalities as well. So I don't want to make that out like that's just a Black ideology, but the depth of the importance of it is what is specific to the Black ideology, right? It doesn't literally define your life. And with us, it does. And it sometimes can be life or death. That's a real thing, you know, and you have to grind, so to speak. And it's influenced by, you know, music. In the video that I did, I pretty much summarized remnants of oppression, which are pretty much the lasting effects of, you know, things like slavery, segregation, you know, just systematic racism in general, into two parts, and that's programs and music, right? There's probably more parts than that, but these are probably two of the biggest you could ever think of. They work in tandem with each other, and they're designed to keep us in a bubble, right?
Yeah,
so you would normally say,
no, sorry, I was just like,
right,
yes, I would love you to expound on that.
Yeah. So like, you would normally say, okay, well, why can't these guys understand that they're killing each other over Jordans, right? We say it all the time, right? We're killing each other over shoes. We're killing each other over just stupid things. And you're like, well, why would they want to do that? We don't literally want to kill each other. It's a and I don't say we like I'm out there, I'm not killing anybody. But what I mean is those in the communities that I come from aren't wanting to kill each other. What happens is you're placed in a mindset where this is what life is, and there is nothing outside of it. And it goes back to what I said about who your surrounding is. If you know, if you have friends that are of a more affluent mind frame and they are more familiar with other opportunities, then you'll start to reach, you know, other opportunities, and you'll progress. And that takes us also into another conversation of how there's different types of Black people, right? So you have those who and your show, I have to give credit to your show, Cat Loves LA, right? You actually check out Cat Loves LA if you haven't. Me and my girlfriend binge watched that thing. We binge watched it. I'm serious.
Oh,
It is amazing. It shouldn't be Netflix and chill. It should be like Cat Loves LA and chill. Like this is amazing, and I want the next episode like now. But anyway,
sorry, girl, but
so in Cat Loves LA, you touched on a variance of what I'm describing for the Asian community. Andrew, right? Which I want to know where Andrew is. But anyway, Andrew, he was trying to be what the black people that most know are trying to be.
so
And
Andrew,
he's losing.
just to clarify, Andrew is the character in
Oh
the
yeah.
show, right? Because
Yeah.
like
They gotta see it. They gotta see it.
audience. No, Andrew is the male lead. Is the name of the male lead in Cat Loves LA? Because I get confused. I'm like, wait,
Not Andrew Yang. I'm sorry.
Okay, no, but go ahead. Yeah.
Right. So Andrew was a character, obviously, who was trying to. I don't want to spoil the show, but listen, what you did with Andrew in that show was very indicative of what happens in the black community. A lot of and that's why we can't progress. You know, you would think to yourself, you see all these black people who are making lots of money, who have lots of power and influence and control. Why is things still the way they are? The reason being is because you have to give up something to get that. Those who are I wouldn't be able to talk to you the way that I am right now if I did that. Understand? The only reason this is an anomaly. The only reason this exists is because I am that mindset in this atmosphere. And what it allows you to do is sort of have an understanding. It's like if you were to take a white person who is, you know, successful, if you will, and then turn their skin black and put them here.
Right.
Their mindset and the understanding they would have would be that I have, and mine didn't come from books. It came from experience, and it came from going through things in life and having things happen to me that showed me firsthand what the results of this systemic racism is. I know we've been jumping all over the place. I'm sorry.
No. So actually, I do definitely want you to talk about the welfare system, and then I do also want you to talk about music because I thought that's fascinating. But I just want to go rewind back to if you did not have video games, if that was not an option of an outlet that you had available to you when you were younger. Can you imagine? Can you please project, if you can, if that's possible, what that path would have looked like for you?
Let me put it to you. Let me put it to you very clearly. So I had a brother, right? Now he wasn't my blood brother, but what happens a lot of times in black families is you may have an auntie or a parent that is not doing so hot. I won't go into detail, and their children are then taken in by other family members, right? So my cousin, but brother, we kind of grew up in the same home. We grew up in the same home, raised by the same mom, everything. My brother is no longer with us, right? And before he was no longer with us, he was imprisoned for many years, right? And this is the same guy that I sat on the bunk bed with, talking every day. That was my brother. That meant everything to me. And that was the path that was taken. So and to be very blunt and specific, there were times where the decision had to be made for me to go with him or to play the video game. There's one specific video game. It's actually an Asian influence game. It's called Shenmue. I don't know if you're ever familiar with it, but if anybody's relatively familiar with gaming, you'll know Shenmue was a pretty big game back in the 90s, 2000. So Shenmue was an RPG game that you had to get really deep into. And I was really into this game. I had dedicated 150 hours into the game. And I was so fascinated by it and the world that you were in. And it single-handedly prevented me from going to that particular section of my life that would have involved.
What were those things? Can you tell us what those things were, what kind of activities those things were, or can you not?
Oh, well, yeah. Well, drug dealing. I mean, for the most part, drug dealing and any of the things that come along with that. Drug dealing is a snowball effect. When you start drug dealing, everything else follows. When you drug deal, you then have to protect your territory, which means you then have to get rid of competition, which means you then have it's a snowball effect. So when that starts, that's the first step, and then everything else goes downhill from there. So had I made the decision to start drug dealing, at that point I would have had to carry, because I would have had people who were trying to take from me. And then I would have had to fulfill missions for those who want me to stay where I am. It's a hierarchy. So without going too deep into it, you have to understand that I don't want to get into the realm of that too much. I'm just saying it would have been bad had I followed through that path, which I did not. So I thank God that I didn't. Um, and I can honestly say I've met many people growing up. I've had many friends. Majority of my friends are dead or in jail. And you know what's funny? You hear that all the time on TV, or you might hear it in a movie or something like that, or in some sort of a speech where somebody says, you're gonna end up dead or in jail. You remember the movie Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman?
I definitely saw it. I just don't remember everything about it. I think that was
okay.
a while ago. That was a long time ago.
I'm dating myself now, but listen, Morgan Freeman had a line in there where one of the kids wanted to, drop out of school and be a drug dealer. And he said to him, you'll be dead in a year. And the kid just kind of shook his head and he was like, no, seriously, you'll be dead in a year. A lot of people think that that's just a movie. That is real. You know what I mean? Like, that is real. I honestly, there are tons of people I know who are dead now that I was friends with in school and I wish I could have saved. They're either arrested or they're in a position where they're going to end up one of the two. And it's so common that it affects the youth growing up because that's all you see. Because when I was growing up, that's all I saw from my older, uncles or my older cousins. And these were just the norm, and the entire defeated mindset of scarcity that Andrew Yang describes, it is prominent in the Black neighborhood. Like, as he was describing it, talking about the mindset of scarcity as if it's something that only applies to, certain people, I'm thinking this is all of us. You know what I mean? Like, he's describing every one of us. It's what leads to the mindset of aggression and anger and just, being so snappy. Like, I ride the bus, I take public transportation, and on the bus, there's almost a fight every day, and it's not because somebody's trying to rob somebody. It's just because I don't like how you looked at me. It's just because I woke up this morning and I don't have the job I want to have, so don't look at me. There's an entirely aggressive nature about the existence of us. There was something I was talking on when I said, I think it was a post I did where I said the feeling that you have when, say you lose your job, you lose your car, you don't know where you're going to stay, and you just feel so down and beat down. That is the feeling that, in the Black community you have every morning you wake up. That's even if you have a job, you know what I mean? Because there is no ideal escape, and understanding. And we've become sort of I don't know if you've heard of this before, but a crab in a barrel mindset. This is largely referred to for Baltimore, because Baltimore is one of the more prominent cities of, with violence and gang activity and things of that nature. There's a lot of pictures you'll see with like a crab pulling another crab down. And it's because we all have this mindset of, if you try to make it, I'm going to bring you down. When I grew up in school, if you were in school talking white, right? That's what it's called, talking white or sounding white or trying to be smart. You get beat up. Like, you know what I mean? You can't like talk about
that is
being smart like that. Yeah, like that was not a thing when I, in my time. Now in today's age, it's gotten way worse than it was when I was growing up. Like, these kids today are insane. Like, it's crazy. But when I was growing up,
it's gotten worse in that respect. It's gotten worse.
It's gotten worse in that respect. Yes, it's gotten far worse in that respect. I mean, and there's a lack of respect. Even before, in my time, where you used to, you used to have kids who would say like skip school, or maybe like when their mom's not around, they curse and they smoke or they do little things like that. Now, these kids are doing that in front of their parents. These kids are doing it with their parents. These kids are doing it irregardless of who's there. And, they'll even try to, I was riding a bus. It was maybe like a month and a half ago. There was a 15-year-old kid on there. He was kind of big, by the way, but he actually punched this lady she looked like she was maybe 60 years old. He actually punched this lady because he was rolling up some weed on the bus. And she said that was disrespectful. And he was like, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? And she was like, well, you shouldn't be doing that in front of you. And they started arguing and he swung on her. and like everybody had to clear the bus stopped, the police came, and I'm just saying this is indicative of the way youth has become. I'm actually afraid of what things are going to be like, for my daughters, my 10 and my 6-year-old daughters. Like, I'm afraid for them because
Well,
there is no, go ahead.
I mean, is it because, do you see that the disparities are becoming even greater? Do you think that's the reason? Do you think it's because of media, entertainment? Like, just do you like
Well,
what do you think it's gotten
yeah.
worse?
Well, I think everything intensifies, right? So like if you're doing a drug, you do that same drug for 10 years, the 10th year is worse than the first, second, third, and fourth. So we are in an intense variation of systemic racism. It's getting worse and worse. And the things that we mentioned, like music, are getting worse and worse. Music right now, it used to be you had some good music and then you had some bad music. Now you have bad music. You know what I mean? If you have good music, it won't make play. It won't get airtime because it doesn't go to what the goal is. It doesn't go to what they are trying to push. And I hate using the word they because it just generalizes stuff so much, but that's
No,
what
but I
we
mean,
do in the Black community.
and it's also self-perpetuating too, because then we like brainwash ourselves into thinking that we have a certain role in society that has been like framed for us, before we were even born, right? It's all been set up for us. So it's hard to see outside of it. So then we perpetuate these stereotypes ourselves and at times. Okay, so actually I'm just going to veer off a little bit, and I want you to, and then I do actually want you to get back to the welfare, because I think that's an important thing that we need to talk about. But can you imagine if everyone in your community did have something like the freedom dividend or $1,000 a month, like a floor?
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine how that would have changed anything in your own community? Like, what would that have changed, do you think?
Right. So what I think is, and this actually takes me sort of on the line of thinking that I have when it comes to reparations. But when which I disagree with, by the way. But the freedom
reparations.
I do not agree with reparations.
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it's not something that I would, I'm not going to be like, hey, don't you dare give me money. But my thing is, it diverts, and I'll explain that because it'll sort of correlate with my ideology behind the freedom dividend. It's just that the necessity to save the Black community does not override saving humanity for our country. So that's why I'm, still with freedom dividend. But the idea of reparations and the freedom dividend, I guess you would in that sense, it diverts attention from the true nature, right? So sort of like welfare, I've kind of seen the two in, because welfare is not designed to actually resolve the problem. Welfare is designed to be what I would describe as hush money, right?
Yeah.
Welfare is designed to sort of get you to shut up about the things that are causing you to need money. So it's like, we'll give you enough money to pay your bills, get yourself something nice to eat, and buy yourself some shoes, and just shut up about the fact that you don't have the same opportunities as everyone else. And we sort of buy it, and it's because there's no. Well, let me not go into that. So basically, in terms of the freedom dividend, I feel like it would help, but I think that without getting to the true heart of what is causing the problem, which is the remnants of oppression, then it's no good, because it's not always the lack of money that is the issue. It is the drivers behind the method of thinking, the methodology behind how you view money, in certain aspects. I won't say that's the case for everyone, because had I had it, yes, Lord, it would help me greatly. And I'm in the same place, as these people. But I do think that there needs to be an attack on systemic racism, and there needs to be educational efforts put into sort of helping us understand that these things that are happening around us, from seeing, for instance, if you hear a song that says, go shoot 'em up, bang, bang, rob your grandma, take, all the music that you hear that promotes violence, we lack the ability, we lack the awareness to fight that. You know what I mean? It's not that the music is bad, because I'm a music artist, and sometimes you have to go there. Music is just verbal expression of emotion. If you've experienced that, you have to go there in your music. It's not like you can't talk about violence.
Right.
But the issue is not necessarily the content in the music, it's the lack of reinforcement behind the ears listening to the music. When when people of other communities hear it, they listen to it and they go, that was a nice song, I like that song. When we listen to it, we go, I like that song, I want to rob somebody. And it's reinforced by other people that you're around. When you're sitting there with 6, 7 of your homeboys, you're all smoking weed, and you listen to the song, you don't listen to it and just go, oh, that was a nice song, where he was talking about robbing somebody, hitting a lick. You look around and you go, well, shit, who can we rob? And then you think about the fact that because of the other things that are a part of systemic racism, which force us to go against each other, which is the materialistic mindset that's created since childhood, to the point where these parents are dressing their kids up in Jordans and arguing with each other about whether the kids, that entire ideology forms into one which causes a combative relationship between people, in general. That would happen with any nationality. It's not just black people, but it is just black people. And it's not just black people, but it is more prominent, and it's designed. That's my difference. People say, well, there's violence everywhere. Every time you say black on black crime, they fight it with, well, that's just because there's more black people around. If they're, there's white on white crime too. The issue is not, the issue is that it's reinforced, and it's designed to be that way, and there is no out. It's like you're taught that you have to kill, you have to kill a nigga. I'm saying that just because that's the phrase, that's the way we would say, you taught growing up, I gotta kill a nigga to prove what I'm about, to prove that you gotta respect me. We're taught that our value is in our aggression and our nature of defense. That is what the black community values, not how good you're doing or how smart you are. It's about, if I got into trouble, could I call you and you make them disappear? That's the value that we have in our community. So none of the kids, and I'm not saying that that's what it should be. I'm not saying that's ideal. I'm telling you the reality.
No. I definitely understand that point.
So
I do want to ask though, because, so like the Asian American community, right? Like we're broken into so many different segments in so many different ways, right? Even socioeconomics, right? So like for the black community, like, can you say that there are also different kind of, okay, so I mean, oh my gosh, it's like there's so much to unpack, but like,
I know.
I mean, so here's the thing. So if one thing that you said earlier is like people will see you as selling out if you try and escape this paradigm that's been set up, or whatever it is, right? Or you have to sell yourself out and be more white, or whatever that is. Like, I guess I'm just trying to understand, like, is there really a monolithic black community, or, are there like a lot of, is it really broken up into a lot of different kinds of perspectives and everything like that, depending on like where exactly you grew up? Or do you think it all comes back down to someone had to sell out in some way in order to get out of that, I guess, paradigm? I don't know if I'm.
So I would, no, you're making perfect sense. You make sense. I would preface my response with the fact that this is my opinion, right? So I would preface it with there's many people who may disagree with what I say and my ideology. But I believe that there was, I don't want to say sellout, because I don't like the ideology behind sellout, because, but for the sake of us understanding, because words are just meant to manipulate the mind and cause thought. So the things that people think when we say sellout are accurate. Them selling out, I think, had to happen at some point, because, and it's what I described to you about the, like the blacks you may see in Hollywood, or those that are more successful, I guess you will, never coming back home, or when they do, it's just for like 2 or 3 events and then they're gone, and it's just for promo and things like that. Like, I think at some point, there's a phrase behind every, rich black man is a richer white man, and it's like I think to a degree, you're always under control. You know, like no matter how much you might think like I made it, I'm successful, you know, as a black man, I've achieved this, I've gotten to this point, there's someone above you making sure you stay in check. And it's set up that way because the goal is never for us to change. The goal is for you to be accepted because you managed to do what you should have done. And
Because
I
you
think that those,
yeah, that sort
and I
of like
think,
you fit into
yeah,
the rules neatly. It's so
right.
interesting because this actually, and I know a lot of people don't understand this, and I know we're talking about race a lot here, but like, you know,
It's
that's what
important.
the conversation is. But you
Yeah.
know, it's so interesting because this is actually mirrored in the Asian American community too, and to an extent. It's like you can get
Really?
this far, but you can't get that far. Like, and if you
Right,
get
right,
that far, then you're stepping out of bounds, then we're going to make it you feel very uncomfortable for it, or we're going to take
right.
away your power, or we're going to use you basically as a pawn to, you know, whatever. There's just that, there's a little bit of that, you know, you see it definitely exists in Hollywood, for instance, especially
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to Asian male representation, I would say. There's like a certain bar set, and there's only
Mm-hmm.
a certain limit like that, you know, you can really like go, and then it gets really harder to step above that because then because then you present a bit of a threat in some
Yes,
subconscious way, an existential threat to some people, right? To some
yes.
people. I don't want to generalize, but that is the way like the social system has been set up a little bit, you know? So it's just interesting to hear you talking about it because this does actually apply to the Asian American experience in different ways, obviously, but it's still there,
And
you know?
that,
Um,
yeah, and I think that's interesting, actually. I
yeah, I mean,
think
you
that's
know,
interesting.
not all Asian Americans talk about it. Not all Asian Americans like are even necessarily totally aware of it. But
Mm-hmm.
when you really dig into it, like, you know, a lot of Asian Americans are in the workplace and they always feel like, you know, they can't be like too friendly or they can't be too outgoing, or, you know, some of them feel that way because then they're going to like get like slapped back down into their place, if that makes sense. Like the more
Mm.
subservient, quiet, like well-mannered kind of place, I guess you can say. But you know, I do want to ask you about why, from, you know, with all of your perspective, what speaks to you the most about Andrew Yang's platform or any specific policies that he has?
Well, what I would say, I would speak more to the platform side of it because in terms of his policies, I'll be completely honest with you. I'm not like big on, you know, like all of his policies, and it's not because they're not good or anything. It's just because I'm not well versed in that nature at this juncture in my life. It's not something that, you know, I really have. I don't put it to my forefront. His platform, humanity first, is what really grabbed me because to me, I feel like if your mind is in the right place and your heart is in the right place, everything else falls into the right place.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
So I don't feel the need to go through his policies and figure out, you know, how good they are because I know what the intention is and I know what his purpose is. And it if I were to find what I would be looking for, it would contradict his entire existence. It's like looking through your boyfriend's cell phone for, you know, like bad messages to people. Like, what are you doing that for? You're trying to take away the whole, like, you know. So it's like I just feel like I trust him and I trust my heart
Mm.
and I follow my heart. And honestly, Andrew Yang speaks to me. I always say that what I really love about the Yang Gang is I love the Yang Gang. I tell everybody who's Yang Gang that I love you and you are my family. You are innocent until proven guilty, and you have to force me to not be family with you. And that's because I come from a place where you know, I am desolate right now as it relates to that type of relationship with people. You know, I was remnants of oppression and systemic racism has caused the crumbling of my family. I haven't spoken to my mother in years. She was helping keep my daughters from me, who their mom is taking from me and, you know, forcefully keeping from me and threatening them, and got me jumped not too long ago because I wanted to see them. And like there's it's very deep. And the Yang Gang sort of came along and was like that thing for me. You know, this is deep.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
could not be here. You know, this is means a lot to me. So when certain people play with these words and they're just like, oh, Yang Gang love humanity. No, this is my life. Like, this is everything to me. And, you know, if it wasn't for the fact that I have to work so hard to make sure that I can maintain, you know, because I have to take care of my son, who is 9 months old, and also fight in court against the mom of my 10 and 6-year-old who is keeping them against me, against a court order. I have to pay all this money out and make sure that I can take care of myself. I would put my heart and soul into this because, you know, what Andrew Yang is doing is really trying to change the world one country at a time. You know, he's changing the ideology that we have of it and of life, and it's so much bigger than a campaign. That's what resonates in me. I know I veered off a little bit, but the purpose was just for me to sort of express that it's not a policy. I don't want to reduce this to a campaign. A campaign is beneath what we're discussing. This is like spiritual. This is I don't know. And you spoke to this at the rally, at the LA rally, when you were speaking. I was like, yes.
Jerold, the fact that we're talking right now on this channel, right? Like, this is completely a people movement, right?
Yeah,
and it wouldn't
100%.
be possible without the amount of dedication and passion that we have for this movement. And a lot of people, it's hard to articulate exactly what this movement is, but we know deep down that it is bringing humanity in the right direction. As corny as that sounds, we know deep down that this is what we've kind of been waiting for, right? And we didn't know existed or could exist. And I mean, no one would get this psyched or this connected or have a YangGang kind of experience if a political campaign did not stand for something much more than a political campaign. You know what I mean? And
agreed.
It's just, so I am completely on board with you in that sentiment. Like, you know, that's why it's like, you know, when I listen to his interview, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm like, this is it, you know, everything that he stands for. But you know, it is also beyond his words a lot of the times. It's just like, I feel the heart of his policies. And then you look at the policies and you're like, oh wow, it all makes sense. It all informs this humanity first mindset, this mentality that he's promoting. Yeah, I mean, that's why, you know, whatever, like I said, this was Scott, you know, whatever happens beyond 2020, even though he is going to be in the Oval Office, like, this movement can't stop with a political campaign.
Cannot stop.
You know? Yeah. It's just too important. Stop. It's way too important.
It's way too important. I'm 100% behind that.
Between a potential utopia and a dystopia, in my
right. Yeah. I'm 100% on board with the idea of keeping this going. I think that, like I said, I think that the presidency is just like a word that we've come up with as a society of human beings to sort of label things. But what this is just like a mindset, a heart set, an ideology of how life is. And I love the fact that we're able to sit and have these conversations. This, you know, you mentioned earlier that some people may be a little off put by the discussion of race, you know. I was always one of those people who never were, because I don't like when people say things like, you know, I don't see color, you know, I'm not racist. I don't see color.
I'm sorry. I think we should all like appreciate that we're all different and accept each other equally as being different.
Exactly.
And recognizing the fact we're different. There's no such thing. I'm sorry. And I'm sorry if this offends people. There's no such thing as being colorblind. It just does not exist.
It makes no sense.
Right.
And in fact, it's actually offensive, because it's like, you're taking away everything that makes me who I am. You know what I mean? It's like, what do you mean you don't see color? This is what I am. I love this color about me, and I wish you would just love it too. And if you don't love it, that's fine. But I just think it's so primitive to sit and argue about race. Like, you know, like you don't see like a deer and a gazelle and an antelope, like, well, look at this guy, he's got stripes. You know, like we're all beings, and we just have to understand that everybody's different. There's different facets of life. Certain people excel, or certain races excel in certain things, and certain ones don't. You know, they always sort of say black people are what about hip hop or about rap, about creativity in terms of that. And if that was something to be associated with being black, I don't think it's negative. I don't think it's racist. Like, I think it's a realization of reality. I mean, reality is, if you see that type of material coming from those, and I think a lot of times it comes from our experiences too, because we have to vent. And that's why when a lot of artists come out and they're from places like where I'm from, they have so much to sort of, creatively articulate, because we aren't taught the articulation of writing a book, writing a novel about everything. It comes in the form of music, which is how I became an artist, because I originally did poetry. Writing lab was my favorite subject in school. And, my poetry eventually evolved because I had a good friend of mine who did rap music. And, it's just verbal expression of self. So, like I said, I like for us all to understand that each race has a significant meaning of its own. And there is, I actually, I'm going to say something that might be a little bit off-putting, okay? But I'm just saying this because I want you to understand where my mindset is. I listened to David Duke, okay? I'm sorry. I know
Wait,
that's
I
like
don't
blasphemy right now to say his word. You
I
don't
don't
know who that is, okay?
is.
Good. David Duke he was the previous head of the KKK, okay? So I know. I
No,
know it's very
it does sound familiar. Okay, that's all right.
yeah, it's probably very off-putting, but listen, he did an interview on TV. I think it was I forgot who it was. It was a long time ago. And I listened to it because I wanted to understand the mindset of a racist. Like, because it's too stupid for me to believe that there's no ideology behind it. Like, I'm like, you can't literally think that because my skin is brown, that means I act different. Like, that's stupid. So I wanted to really understand it. And, his ideology, or white nationalists, probably similar to the way Donald Trump thinks. They just believe that each nation or each race should stay within their own because of the values that they have, and they don't want those to dissipate. I honestly am one of the only people who probably don't necessarily disagree with that. Now, and I'm not saying I'm a nationalist, but my thing is, my problem comes into play when you start to force people to do things they don't want to do. Anytime you're doing that, that's a problem. And I feel like we all should just understand that. Even, I'm saying this to say, if you're wondering, Paget, why I'm running on this tangent, I'm saying this to say that even with someone who's borderline racist or a Trump supporter, we can still find common ground, even in those people, because these people aren't necessarily always evil. They have an ideology and they believe in it. And if we help them understand that it doesn't have to be projected the way they project it, because I listened to David Duke talk, which is like the devil in my community. He's the devil as far as we know. They burned our houses down, they killed us, they hung us. But if you listen to him talk, I don't believe that the people who follow him necessarily just, I don't know. It's deeper than I guess we could really get into right now.
I understand what you're saying.
Right.
I definitely applaud you for, like, so this is where I definitely agree with you, is like, we need to be open-minded enough to be able to listen to the other side, in order to find what is the common ground, if there is any. Sometimes it's a total lost cause, right? And it's just not worth doing anymore. But even actually morbid curiosity, maybe, right?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I honestly, like, I could talk to you for hours about all this stuff just because I find it very fascinating. But yeah, I
got you.
yeah, just like the actions that follow from it.
No, I'm with you.
It almost feels like it's like, okay, so I understand where you're coming from about the like core ideology, but then I feel like maybe that's just being used potentially as an excuse to then commit horrible, horrific acts. I don't know. Like, I'm not really sure which one informed the other, because it seems like in a really extreme, like, because I know some other Asians too who are just like, we need to stick more together. We need to like really preserve like our Asian culture and all of that stuff. And they're really against assimilation. They're really against, crossbreeding or whatever you want to call it, right? And I'm just like, okay. I see some of their points, like in a sense, right? That maybe some culture gets lost, right? Maybe certain values get lost, like languages get lost, all of that stuff. Like I feel really, like, honestly sad that I can't speak Korean. It's something that I'm like, do you know what I mean? And so that does make
exactly what you mean.
Yeah, it makes me sad. But yeah, it's just a matter of like, well, which one?
It's like, yeah, but no, we're not hanging people.
Making this, I mean, like,
I'm with you. I follow you, and I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's just and I don't want it to be, mistaken. I'm not saying that those people have any credibility or we should dissolve any of our negative associations with them. I just think that it gives rise to a possibility or a hope for humanity being placed first, even in them, in that understanding that we are different and it's okay. That's what the real problem is. We are different and it's okay. Like people are like, we're different. Oh my God. No, we're different and it's fine. And I think if we could convey that, I think that the same ideology you have about, about those who may be using that as an excuse, I think that same ideology to a degree could be used for those in my community, as it relates to, so I sympathize, not sympathize, I understand to a degree from a completely different retrospect, so that's why I'm, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, sorry, I keep on interrupting you. No, I was just gonna say, no,
Okay.
here's the thing. I wholeheartedly completely admire you and respect you for being able to see all sides of every coin, right? That's how human beings are able to evolve. It's not just like being in an echo chamber or just being, or just like having blinders on. That's not how we evolve as people. That's not how we get stronger in general.
Exactly.
So I so much respect. I mean, I don't know if this is all because of video games. It's kind of hard for me to believe.
No.
You have a very evolved way of being able to look at things from different perspectives, and it's quite amazing. Yeah. So
it's necessary.
Yeah.
For me to survive in my given state, and my daughters play a huge role in it. My oldest daughter, Journey, my 10-year-old, when she was born 9/109, September 1st, 2009, and I held her and I looked her in her eyes, like I can't even explain to you the feeling, like such a spiritual feeling, like and the idea that something in me came out in this, like I was just so mind blown. I was like, oh my God, like this is crazy. And it just kind of changed my understanding of life. Like we don't understand how powerful we are as human beings. I see the God in everybody, so even a person who is evil, if you will, something happened, and having children greatly changes my perspective. My daughters right now are being kept from me by their mom because she was kept from her dad by her mom, who she was talked bad to about. So she is a product or victim of her circumstance. My children will not be that because I taught them at a very young age about what their mom is going through. Some people would argue that I should not have done that. I would argue that I rescued them and saved them, and I'm the only reason that they're able to still believe in me as of now. I take that same mindset and I apply it to life. Adults are just children who got older. Like like a 30-year-old is a 10-year-old 3 times over. Like they have the same thing in them, and a lot of times they lack the same comfort and love that you have as a child. So without that nurturing ability to go alongside the thoughts and the mindset that you have, you get an adult. So I feel like we can all revert back to a child state of mind when you get a certain sense of love and compassion. And I don't say that to say that everything can just be killed with kindness. That's not always the case, or killed with love, but it can definitely open some doors up when you start to think about people as victims. And I'm very much against victimization, which is a plague for the Black community, unfortunately. But I think that we all, to a degree, are victims of our circumstance because our beliefs were just taught to us. I don't believe anybody was
right.
Yeah,
Was
exactly.
Set up for you in that circumstance.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's my motivation for feeling the way I feel, in terms of being able to understand both sides, and also the fact that I teach it to my daughters. I have to teach my 10 and 6-year-old to understand. I teach my 10-year-old to understand what it's like to be 6, and my 6-year-old to understand what it's like to be 10, and the fact that she's tasked with protecting her younger sister, and the fact that you're tasked with living up to the image of your older sister and understanding. And I cannot do that on a daily basis, and then turn around at life and say, but it's different for you. You know what I mean? So I have to have this mindset, you know.
I wanna end with a question that I don't know if you can answer or not. And by the way, guys, like if you're watching, go to his channel. It's in the description below and subscribe to his channel. Let's get him 1,000 subscribers or more. But you know, where you are right now, like how receptive do you think like people would be in your community where you are in Baltimore to Andrew Yang's $1,000 a month? Is there like a cognitive dissonance of like, or skepticism? Like, what do you think, you know, how do we spread the message in your community? What would be the most effective way?
So what really hurts about this is I fear that it would be rather hard. And I don't think that it would be because of skepticism. I think that it's because of the abundance of overarching problems that currently exist. You know, for instance, I'm walking down the street and there's a, you know, stop shooting, start living protest going on as I'm walking down the street. You know, I posted this video not too long ago on my Twitter.
Yeah, I saw that.
If I were to try to talk to those people about Andrew Yang, these people have cousins, brothers, sisters, you know, that have been killed recently. They don't really want to hear, you know what I mean? Like, it's not that they don't want to hear about it. It's just that the problems that we face are a bit more prominent, or a bit more, they take precedence over the $1,000 a month. And that's not to say that they wouldn't. I think, first off, I think that they would immediately vote for him, by the way. If I were to be able to get past this threshold I'm describing to you, yes, they're going to vote for him either way. But I'm just describing the adversities that I feel you would face, because so many, you know, people are just beat down over the head about just everything that's going on, the crime, the promotion of the negativity in our communities. I think that that's what's going to be hard to get through. And that's the problem that I face with trying to get it through. So alongside, you know.
Would there be any like influencers, for instance, like, you know, because a lot of people are saying, you know, we need to get the Black community and influencers are the way to go. We need to get like a Snoop Dogg. We need to get LeBron. We need to get, you know what I mean? Like, do you think that that is the key? Is that the key? Like if you got, and how, by the way, how influential is Whoopi Goldberg in the Black community?
Not very much.
Yeah, I think so. If I'm being honest, like I'm like, yeah, Whoopi, but then I like question, but how influential? And then same with Van Jones. I'm like, but how influential is he in the Black community? I don't really know. Like those are two big question marks for me. So we can't just like, but one question is like, how influential would like Donald Glover be? You know, how he created the show Atlanta.
Not so much.
Really?
I mean, that's it. I'm just speaking from my perspective. Obviously, some may disagree, but coming from Baltimore's perspective, first of all, a lot of people probably don't even know who Donald Glover is. And if you know who he is, then it's because you have like that one guy who's your friend who listens to Tyler the Creator, who also has a playlist that had Donald Glover in it, or like you know, like you know him from that realm, but he's not like a influential force that I think would change those who you're speaking of reaching. I think those more in the Van Jones category would probably be influenced by him. I would say more people like Tyler Perry. Tyler Perry is probably one person that I would definitely say would be able to speak to us. I mean, there's a bunch more rappers, but the problem with rappers is their control.
Al Sharpton, Oprah.
Oprah. I don't know about, I mean, Oprah, I don't think so much, honestly. I think maybe like it would be more of a generational thing. Because
Danny Glover,
Oprah
sorry, I have to.
Donald Glover?
Danny Glover, sorry.
Danny Glover, Lethal Weapon, I'm sorry, yes.
Gambino, I am sorry, guys, like.
Yeah, I was like, which one? Because Danny Glover's from.
I was thinking about the TV. I just know the guy as the TV show creator in Atlanta. That's it.
Yeah, that's okay. Donald Glover is more widely known, I would say, in our aspects as Childish Gambino. Yes, and his music is seen as like weird rap. You know what I mean? To those that are like from, you know, the areas that are most vastly affected by the things that the freedom dividend seeks to change. When he says giving Black people buying power, making us valuable, I think those that will be affected by that aren't necessarily bumping Childish Gambino, but that's part of the problem. That's part of the systemic. There's a reason they're not, because he is an intellectual. He is, you know, he's somebody who would embrace change and influence productivity, and that's the last thing they want. And when I say they, I mean those who are running the record labels who give millions of dollars to any Black rapper who say he'll kill somebody. They're like, oh, you'll kill people and, you know, help you know, keep up the ideology that we have of Black people. Cool, sign him. You will too. Okay, cool, sign him. But if you start talking things that make sense, they're not giving you anything. So, you know, that's where we are. I think Tyler Perry would be awesome. Obama, yes.
Obama, why? Okay, can I ask why exactly Obama?
Well, I personally don't think that people are privy to what they would have to be to know why not Obama. If you follow what I mean.
Yeah.
So, you know, you get what I mean? So, because I know.
Yeah, but, I do know what you mean, because like my big question is like, yes, Obama was the first Black president, but ... Like, you know, there's some buts in there, like, but you're right. Okay, so yeah.
Yeah, they voted for him because he was Black. You know what I mean? I mean, you know, think about the simplisticness of the reason he got the Black vote, because he's Black. Like, so, you know, that I think he would speak, and I think he's gonna endorse Andrew Yang, I would assume, at some point, hopefully.
People are saying no, they don't think he's going. He's not going to endorse anyone that isn't nominated.
You never know what Obama's gonna do, and that's the problem. But, you know, but whatever. I think if he were to, though, I think people would take to that and they would follow it, not for any educational reason, but for a materialistic reason or a shallow reason. But whatever the reason, we know that Andrew Yang's the right choice. So who cares what their reason is? They're gonna benefit, you know. So yeah, there's plenty of other influencers I would mention other than Tyler Perry. It's just we don't have, you know, we're winding down here. And I mentioned Tyler Perry a little bit earlier, actually. It's so funny you bring this up, because I mentioned that earlier in a post that I did, that I thought Tyler Perry would be he's a good example of somebody who struggled from the bottom, came to the top, was homeless previously, made his way up, and he still understands his roots. You know, he still understands what it's like to go through what we go through. You know, there's normally a point in your life that you have to divide yourself and separate yourself from that. They'll force you to in order for you to take that next level step. He has not done that. Which is why he said he's ignored in Hollywood, you know, and that makes him matter so much more to us, you know. So yeah,
he's succeeded wildly off of being able to set that new kind of formula for himself. You know, okay, so Tyler Perry, that's really interesting. So guys like who are watching, maybe we should try and hashtag.
We should flood him.
Yeah, maybe we should try it. But yeah, I mean, this has been such a great conversation. I feel like we could talk for hours about all day. But you know what? You have plenty of content on your channel talking about all of these,
and more to come.
Yes. So guys, please check him out. I hope, you know, this conversation was somewhat enlightening, you know, just sharing different perspectives. And I really wanted to introduce you to him. Thank you, Will Chang, also for introducing us and connecting us and making this interview happen. So yeah, good night, you guys. And good night, Jerold. I know that it's very, very late, or it's like 10:30. It's late there.
10:33, yes.
Yeah. You have very long days. So yeah,
I do.
Thank you so much for joining us. And
thank you so much for the opportunity, Paget. I want to just tell everybody before I go, as usual, guys, please make sure to be positive, optimistic, and keep positive people in your circle. Those three things are most important. Shout out to Will Chang, as usual, for everything that he's done. He's inspired me in so many ways. Shout out to MC Jen, too. I love MC Jen and Shaving with Telly. These guys are close to me, man. These are my brothers, man. I love you guys, though.
Okay. Good night, guys.
Right.
Good night.
Good night.
See you.